Welcome to the Lexington Community Coalition Resource Show. It's an opportunity for us to reach out to the community, to different members of our community, and find out what they provide to Lexington. And today we're fortunate enough to have two members of our community. We have Tom Martellone, who is from Fisk. He's the principal there. And we also have Kristen Gobiel, who is a second grade teacher there. Welcome, both of you. It's
Great.
so lovely
Welcome.
to have you here.
Great to be
Are
here.
you ready? You're on the hot seat.
We're absolutely ready. Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So as part of the coalition, we really try to let our members know, let the community know what is out there and get them understanding the school systems, what resources they have available to them. So in that vein, can you give me a sort of an introduction into terms of how long you've been here, your role, and how you see it in the community?
I've been at Fisk, this is my 5th year. I came as a kindergarten teacher and I'm currently teaching 2nd grade in the general ed classroom.
Okay.
And this is my 8th year at Fisk. As principal, prior to that, I was a longtime administrator in the state of Maine. And I did a short stint at the Massachusetts Elementary and Secondary Education, the Department of Ed.
Wonderful. Okay, so you have pretty good, 5 to 9 years. You've been around for a while. That's wonderful. So have I. So can you tell me, there's been some shifts over the course of that period of time. Certainly with Dr. Chakowski, when she came in, there was a shift where we were definitely focused on academic achievement, and we continue to be very highly ranked within the state and within the country. But there's been a shift over the last 3 years or so to looking at social and emotional child, the wholeness of the child, and sort of shifting into that realm and looking at how we can support the social and emotional child. Can you speak to that in terms of what Fisk is doing in particular, what focus you have, vision you have for the school and the child?
Sure. I think the Lexington community as a whole has always desired and wanted for our students to be high achievers. I think what we've also recognized in the community is that in order for students to do well academically, that they need to have social emotional supports, so that they are, if you will, well-rounded students, so that they can handle and understand how to navigate stress, interacting with others. And I think particularly at Fisk, I would say, I feel like our school has a history of engaging kids not only in academics, but socially and emotionally as well. So probably for about the past 5 years, we, along with other schools, have implemented positive behavior intervention supports, PBIS, as a way to positively kind of redirect behavior, help kids know what expectations are. And then in addition to that, we've been trying some other things around creative play and ways to maybe help kids not feel stressed and help them feel more engaged with school.
I think responsive classroom is a really fantastic model that we all use in our classrooms, and that has a component around morning meeting time, so it starts our day out. We have the that you greet each person in the classroom. You have a sharing component. There's an activity that brings us together, sort of gets us moving, and little brain breaks, a little energizer. And then we have a morning message that we start the day academically to kind of give them a cue as to what's going to unfold in the rest of the day. But with the responsive classroom model, it just makes the community develop so much easier. So we start out in the beginning of the school year doing that. We create rules together so that we establish things that we all agree upon. And it's just a way for children to be validated by one another and feel included, inclusive environment, and to just be sensitive and have empathy for others too. So I think a well-run classroom has to have a good community feel to it, and everyone has to feel respected and appreciated, and then the academics come so much more smoothly. So we have a nice balance at Fisk. In the beginning of the first 6 weeks of school, we're setting sort of that tone. We're reviewing the PBIS chart that we have, so we have a lot of common language, so everyone is on the same page, everyone knows the expectations. And when children are invested in creating the rules together, then they're more apt to follow those and to support one another to be successful.
So is the PBIS integrated into responsive classroom? How does that work? Are they two separate elements, or are they complementary or?
So PBIS and responsive classroom.
Oh, and PBIS, maybe we just.
Positive behavior intervention support.
Okay.
So PBIS really works alongside responsive classroom. So responsive classroom is really focused around one kind of building classroom, school community. It's about the way that you talk and interact with children. PBIS is really around making sure that kids understand what the expectations are. So for instance, our school has 3 core values. They're respect, responsibility, and best effort. And what we do within the PBIS system is that we talk to kids. What does respect look like on the playground? What does responsibility look like if you're in an all-school assembly? What does best effort look like if you're in the library? And so we're teaching kids what those expectations are, because if you're a student who's not demonstrating appropriate behavior, we feel as though we need to first make sure that you understand what the expectations are. And then part of PBIS is really when students are following the expectations, it's about recognizing them in a positive way to reinforce those positive behaviors. The premise around responsive classroom is around building community. It's around teacher language as they interact with kids. So for instance, instead of saying to children, don't run down the hall, the language might be, I'd like to see people who are walking safely. So again, it's really about language and how you're kind of interacting with kids, if you will.
It has a positive tone. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we're able to say we want to be respectful, responsible, and show our best effort. And how do we do that? What does that look like? So that's how we are able to weave it.
Do you mean as teachers? How are we respectful and or
as part of our
as the community?
What is
Okay.
expected from our students and
Okay.
from all of us and staff, like being respectful, being responsible,
Right.
and what's best effort. And so when we use that component for responsive classroom of how to build what our agreed upon things are, that's what we're thinking about. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of others? How do we take care of our environment, whether it's our classroom or our school as a whole?
So I'm trying to get a picture of how this unfolds. So in the beginning, in the first 6 weeks, you sort of establish the rules within the classroom and the expectations, and you come together as a group and you say, these are the rules for our classroom, keeping in mind the themes of the core values that you have as a school. Does that continue throughout the year, that conversation? And if so, how? Is it formalized or is it an informal thing?
So we did develop a PBIS guide for the school, and teachers can use it as a tool if they feel they need a tool to use. What we generally ask teachers is that they spend the first part of the year doing 2 things. So one, they're really working to make sure that kids understand the expectations around the school. That's one piece around the PBIS. The other piece, and I've asked that all staff participate in responsive classroom because that language then is a consistent theme throughout the school. So what classroom teachers are also doing is they may review a little bit each day related to PBIS and what the expectations are. At the same time, they're working to build their classroom community. So for instance, at the beginning of the school year, Kristen might have had her whole class together, and they might talk about what are things that make our classroom a safe and welcoming place. And they might come up with some classroom, if you will, rules or agreements for their room. The other pieces is that they're getting to know one another. So they're doing some of those responsive classroom activities that maybe it's a greeting, maybe it's another activity. Sometimes there's the greeting piece, as Kristen mentioned, but then there are also some kind of warm-up or energizer type of activities to kind of get kids getting ready to go for the day. Sometimes at the beginning of the year, let's say kids are doing a center activity and maybe they're not using the materials the way that you might have showed them. You may stop, you might have a quick classroom meeting and talk about how to best use the materials. So what happens is that you front load a lot of the work, and that way you're then doing some periodic reminders. We do with the PBIS, my assistant principal and I ask teachers after each vacation to just do a quick check-in and make sure that kids are then kind of refreshed around the expectations.
Okay, and you mentioned with the PBIS that there's sort of reinforcement of it or reward, some kind of reward system.
There is.
There is. Okay.
So
tell me about that.
So we have a small card. It's a business card. They get printed up at our print shop in the district.
Okay.
And our school mascot's an owl, and the cards are called a WHO card. And what happens is that when teachers see students meeting their expectations, they give them one of those cards and they say, for instance, Lana, I really liked the way that you were standing so quietly in the hallway. And so we cite the reason that you get it, to reinforce the expectation. What happens is the student puts their name on it, and they drop it into a little container. We have them around the school. And then once a month, we draw out from each grade level, we draw out 2 Who cards. So we have an all-school assembly every month. And up at the front of the gym, we have 6 bean bags. We call it the Owl's Nest. And so if you get your name drawn, you get to sit in the Owl's Nest. And then for the other 6 kids, 1 from each grade level, if they get their name drawn, they get to have lunch with me and my assistant principal, and they can bring a friend.
And we also can earn a whole class who
Oh, that's
agree
fun.
from
Yeah.
anyone in the staff. So if my class is being respectful and responsible and they're STQ, standing tall and quiet in the hallway while they're moving through the building, if they go to art and they're performing well, the art teacher could give us one, or anyone is, if they notice that you're really being respectful and behaving. And I think we've built that common language, that expectation, and they're understanding it's being respectful when you're walking through the hallways quietly because other people are learning in the environment. So they also feel very validated when they get one of the large ones, and then we usually have those in display in our room as well.
Right.
And that's just to feel good about how you're performing as a whole group.
Right. Okay. So one thing that kind of comes to mind for me is, are you conscious or sort of aware of maybe some kids that are falling through the cracks a little bit, maybe not as noticed for their Who's, but there's some validity that they're doing the PBIS or they're adhering, but they're just not being seen to do that. Is there any accountability for that or recognition of that?
I guess I would just say that, I think teachers try to be mindful and are watching all the time for kids that are meeting expectations. The PBIS and the responsive classroom are some of the things that we're doing. Yeah. So for instance, when kids enter the school in the morning, we have a positive greeting and it's posted on a board and it changes every day. And I try to be out in the lobby when kids are coming in, and I try to make sure I'm greeting kids so that there's a positive interaction that way. In addition to that, we've started, if you will, an initiative. I had shared with staff earlier, I think it was this year, maybe even the end of last year, that I know how busy people are during the week, and how it's really, you get to Wednesday and you're thinking, oh, I can't wait till the weekend because I want to rest or get some stuff done. But I wanted to be careful about the messaging we were sending to children. So instead of saying to kids like, oh, I can't wait until the weekend, what incentive would be there for kids to want to be in school? Right. So what we do now is, and there's been a movement of this on Twitter. You can find it at #CelebrateMonday. So every Monday I have a positive message for staff posted on the board as well when they come in. Yeah. And then in addition to that, I usually will put a message out on an intro website like TGIM, like I'm so glad it's Monday and that we're all back here together. And then I'm asking teachers to promote that message with children too. So kids get positive reinforcement through the classroom meeting where everybody's greeting and interacting. We work really hard to recognize as many kids as we can through the PBIS system. We do order at least 2 or 3 times a year 5,000 Who cards. So there were lots of Who cards being given out in a school of 500 children. Right. And I've asked staff, please give them out generously, because it's that positive reinforcement that helps kids really want to meet expectations. And then there are other things like our all-school assembly. There's the positive message in the morning. There's lots of, we're working really to send positive messages out to kids that are engaging and kind of make them feel validated and wanted in the school.
Right. I love the idea of that message that you have as kids are coming in. It reminds me of in the British tube system, their subway system. The subway people, they just write these interesting things to think about that, as you're a commuter rushing through, I got to start my day. And then you see this message, it kind of takes you out of your head and creates that, oh, right, life, it's not so bad. So I love that idea. What other things? So you've got responsive classroom. You've got the PBIS. Are you involved with Open Circle or Windows and Mirrors? Is that also part of your?
So Windows and Mirrors were lessons that were developed by the district, and teachers have been asked across the district to teach those lessons. There are lessons for each grade level, which really are intended to help students learn about and be aware of different people and people who might be different than them. or help them identify. So we have windows and mirrors lessons that we use. And, Brian and I will periodically check in or remind teachers, like, don't forget, would like to make sure that, these lessons are being developed. Some teachers have been trained in Open Circle and use those lessons. So Open Circle really was about specific kind of sets of lessons when certain things arose in the classroom. Those kind of fit nicely under that umbrella of responsive classroom. So responsive classroom is really like this big umbrella, if you will, and then the Open Circle lessons are some of those lessons that address specific things that might occur, social interactions with kids or other things that might happen in the classroom. Not every teacher's been trained in Open Circle, but the guidance counselor, our school counselor rather, has been. And so sometimes teachers will go and solicit and say, hey, I've had this happening in my room. Could you come in and do some Open Circle lessons? I'll participate with you.
Right, and our guidance counselor has been a great resource for us in the classroom as well. And she will come in, especially if we identify that we have, a need, if we need to have a group discussion or we would like some support with an Open Circle lesson. There's also social thinking is another curriculum that's out there, and we've had opportunities through professional development to learn about that, and we can bring in other components, and our guidance counselor is very knowledgeable in that. So some of the common language of like having a thinking bubble and a speech bubble, sometimes some of the things you're keeping to yourself, other things you're sharing, or whole body listening. She'll come in and do a mini lesson with that about how to be grounded and focused. We do a whole small mini lesson about friendship sometimes in a friendship circle and understanding, how you perceive a relationship and how you might be perceived by that person, and understanding you may have a best friend at times, you may not, how to deal with those feelings and how do we problem solve around that. One of the things I love that we do together with the class is getting them to identify their feelings with a number, saying 1 is your worst day ever, like a very, very sad situation maybe or an emotion you're having, and a 5 being your best day ever, and then getting them to sort of figure out where their feelings are in perspective. So if Tom's sharing that his cat is really sick and he's at a 2, and then I'm thinking, oh, I was feeling like a 3 because my brother spilled my cereal, maybe I want to adjust that number, and it also allows us as a classroom to identify with how someone else might be feeling. You don't have to share it. You can just say, I'm feeling like a 3 today. And then we hope that your number is going up, and then we'll do a check-in later. But it also allows the classroom teachers to, or people that are coming in, like say our guidance counselor, we get a pulse of where everyone is emotionally feeling that day. So if I know someone's really sad, that gives me an opportunity as an educator to go over and check in with them at another point, just to see if I can do something that might help encourage their spirits.
It touches on the empathy and the compassion component.
Yes.
And also, to my observation, as you sort of track these emotional states that all the kids are in, they can start to notice, oh, well, these emotions move in and out of me. Yes. They're not stagnant. They're not going to stay. So that's a really empowering.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
They'll say, I think my number's just gone up because someone may say something to them. And then a lot of times we'll check in at the end of the day, and then we'll say, how are you feeling today? And most often they're saying, and they might cite, someone made me feel better because they included me at their lunch table, or asked me to play a game at recess, or was helping me at math. So it's just heightening that awareness of others, not just what your own feelings are, but
right. Do you have any, you've touched on counseling, for example. Actually, let's circle back to the counselors. You mentioned that they'll sometimes come in and if something's come up, they'll do a special program. Are these organic opportunities where the counselor comes in, or are there fixed programs that they also assist in, or what is their role outside of responsive classroom and Open Circle and possibly windows and mirrors?
So really both.
Okay.
So classroom teachers like Kristen, or kindergarten teachers, 5th grade teachers, the classroom teachers generally have all been trained in responsive classroom. So they run those morning meetings within their class. We have district-wide guidance lessons that are taught a couple times a year. And so the counselors and social workers come in and deliver specific lessons that have been developed for certain grade levels. And then teachers can always reach out to counselors. So we have time built into the schedule if needed. Or if a teacher thinks they need somebody to come in another time, they have them come in. So we have time, though, built into the schedule each week. And sometimes the counselor comes in when those lessons are scheduled. And then there are times where maybe Kristen sees that a group of her kids have not been getting along as well as she might like. And she might say to the counselor, look, I'd love for you to come in and let's kind of co-teach or co-facilitate a discussion around how we treat one another or how we should be treating one another. So it's really a blend of kind of this district-wide, if you will, the curriculum and the resources and lessons, and then those times when it's needed and the teacher identifies and maybe partners with the counselor.
Okay, wonderful. So it's really responsive. You guys are responsive right on the spot.
We're trying really hard.
Yeah, you're the front line, so I can imagine. Do you have any examples of children, the student body, responding wonderfully to these programs that you have in place, or where you've had feedback from the students directly, or even a teacher saying, hey, this really worked, like this really helped with this situation?
I'm just thinking about, we have an upcoming day, it's called Global School Play Day. So this will be the second year we've participated. So really there's been a lot of research around students and really how maybe people sometimes don't think that play is necessarily important. And that we've as a society have really moved away from play. But really, you know, people will say that play is children's work and therefore they learn through play, whether it's navigating a game or figuring out turn taking. So last year on Twitter, I found that there was a movement called Global School Play Day. And there were over 250,000 students that participated worldwide. And it really was about supervised but undirected play for children. And schools could do an hour, they could do 3 hours, they could do the whole day. So I went to the staff and I said, look, it's a bit of a gamble. What do you think? And so the staff, the staff were like, yes, but I think there was a little bit of hesitation because we weren't really, you know, we have kids that are very scheduled. And we thought, okay, will they play for an hour and then be like, I don't know what to do. The day also is no electronics, nothing electronic. And I just remember at the end of the day last year, a student walking by, actually a number of them, but one child in particular said to me, Mr. Martellone, this was the best day of my life. And I kind of chuckled because I thought, well, you're about 8 and you've got a long time to go. But for that child, though, and I think many children, that was a chance for them to play. And we actually did it for the entire day.
It was phenomenal. And to watch, it requires so many skills. You have to be able to initiate play. You need to have a plan. So we talked about that for the students that were a little uncomfortable with, what do you mean we'll play all day? Like, how does this work? And we talked about how creativity grows from that, and that's how you're inspired to do something. Maybe you'll be inspired to write from that or read, or this is how ideas grow and develop. And they were able to bring in materials that they wanted, but some brought in, you know, beads to make bracelets, or they had sheets to make tents, and there was a lot of imaginative play and board games. But you were able to see a variety of students take the lead, the ones that may not in an academic setting, but they definitely felt more comfortable in orchestrating like a play situation. And it was so creative. I mean, they had made paper cars, and they were sitting in little chairs, and they were going places. And it was just amazing to see all the things that came out of it. And we just stood back. But it was really nice, I think, for classroom teachers to observe that kind of play and see other facets of children's personalities and see how they switch groups so easily.
As a result of that, this year what we've done is every month we provide one 30-minute session of creative play for the kids. And so we do once a month creative play, 30 minutes. We do once a month where we have learning buddies. So that's where kids from a younger grade may partner up with an older student. We'll do a once a month all-school meeting. And then this year we tried something new, which is called Make It and Move It. And that is on a Thursday for 30 minutes. All 500 kids are engaged in an activity for 30 minutes, and they rotate through every month. So our goal is that by the end of the year, every child will have done one of the activities and may have found a preferred activity, or maybe they tried something that they didn't really love, but there's a lesson there about being a risk taker and trying new things. So for instance, on the Make It and Move It days, we've got a cardboard maker space, we have a walking club, we have a blacktop games outside, we have a dance club, we've got a yoga club, we have math games. I mean, there's a little something for everybody. And then, so there were about 70 kids in each activity. And that was new this year. And that's been, I think, kids have responded really well to that. And the teachers really liked it. And it's a great opportunity, again, when you're thinking about kids being engaged in school and you're thinking about trying to provide an environment that's fun and engaging, that also has academic rigor, but you're trying to find positive outlets for kids to feel good about their learning environment. The kids really have responded well.
I think a key word there is engagement. If a child is not engaged, then it's very hard to achieve anything with that child or for themselves. And I really want to commend you for instigating the play day. I'm going to call it play day, because it's fascinating to watch children. You know, if you put a box in front of a really young child, you'll see they're engaged for hours. They just a box, and then as you get older, you put the box in front of the child. They're like, I don't know, what are the instructions? We don't know what to do with this.
Exactly.
But give them enough time, and that creative instinct and that tapping into their creativity comes out. And I think that's what you were seeing with these children. And it reminds them that they are creative beings. I mean, it never dies in any of us. It's there. We just start to overthink a little bit.
Well, I think other things maybe get in the way. So like I've got to get to this math lesson, or I've got to get to reading, or I'm doing this in science. So I think we were surprised, even our fifth graders, which we thought, okay, will they be able to sustain themselves the whole day? They literally played right till the end of the day.
I bet.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and I know the studies you're talking about with respect to play. I mean, we're playful creatures.
Right.
So there you go. I want to turn it to a little bit more of a, not a serious note, but kind of a serious note. I want to talk about the youth risk survey, behavior survey, and the implications for elementary level. This is a survey that's done for middle schools and high schools, and there were some definite concerns with respect to issues of loneliness, depression, anxiety, and even to the extreme suicide ideation. Given the data results that you've seen with that survey, what do you think the elementary schools need support in to ensure that the kids have the ability to maneuver through middle school and high school, given what we're seeing with the survey?
I think some of the things that have resulted over time, I think from the survey results, I also think about what we've really been thinking about as a community is about addressing that social emotional piece for children. So over the past couple of years, all of the elementary schools have got part-time social workers. And then we've been working to increase them to full-time. So I feel like those are people that help support kids that maybe have shown anxiety, or maybe they've shown stress, or maybe even at the elementary level have made comments about self-injurious behavior. So I think having trained professionals there, I think really is a great resource. I feel like we are also very fortunate that we have really skilled school counselors. And I think teachers are really watchful of children. So when we get data from the youth risk behavior survey, I think it's informative to us, because I think, if you will, it maybe some of that data foreshadows like what could we be doing proactively at the younger grades. So when we're talking about fifth grade, for instance, does a human growth and development. And so that's a unit that they do, and there's some teaching there. There's wellness and some health education that's infused through the physical education classes. So that's a piece. So I think those pieces, based on what we learn about kids in middle school and high school, help inform some of the work that we do. I also feel like schools in Lexington do quite a good job with what we call response to intervention, or RTI, meaning that we're always kind of combing through kids and looking at and talking about kids of concern. And that's not just academics. So, for instance, at Fisk, we meet every 6 weeks, and teachers can bring up children of concern at these kind of grade level meetings. And then we've got the social worker will be there. It might be a Metco social worker there. It could be the school counselor. There are a number of people there who are kind of listening in, and then we're putting things into place to support those kids that we see that might be struggling. And again, it's not just reading and math and writing, but it's also kind of the social emotional piece as well. So I feel like the teachers are very watchful of children, and so I feel like when we see things kind of crop up, we're trying to be nimble in how we work to address them. Has
the changing demographics has that had any implications in terms of being watchful or supporting a community where more and more families who may not have English as their first language are coming into the school system, and how are you able to support these families and these children who not only are coming to a new system but to a new language? Are there accommodations in place? Are there things you're considering?
So I don't know if, Kristen, if you've been a mentor, but probably over the past 3 years, we've had, if you will, we've been developing a newcomer, what we call a newcomer mentoring program.
Okay.
And the program really is to support kids when you're a student who maybe comes to our school and you, let's say, don't speak any English, you might be called a newcomer. And then we have, a range of children that come to us, for instance, let's say that maybe they speak a little English or, some are more proficient. But we've been working to pair up students maybe that come with no language or limited English, for instance, with an adult in the building who mentors them. We got some support to start the program a few years ago through LEF. Mm-hmm. And so those kids get mentored by an adult in the building. And it's not necessarily always, I'll just say, around teaching. It's not like I'm going to mentor you and show you how to read a book. It might be like our music teacher mentored a student from Japan and they played the ukulele together. Mm. So it's about kind of being a support network. While we're also mentoring those children, we've been holding events at the same time for the newcomer parents. Okay. So we're really working to try to do some outreach there to help kind of pull them into the fold, if you will, and help them be part of this school community. We're fortunate we have people who do translation, and we work really hard to get translators in, for instance, for parent conferences. And then I think this is the case throughout Lexington, but I know definitely at Fisk is that we have lots of families. For instance, if you're a family who lives in the Fisk district and you're a family with a Korean background and you speak Korean and English, sometimes if we get a new family in that doesn't speak a lot of English, those families will kind of partner up. And I think that's a great support. I think the community is supportive outside of the school, which I think is helpful as well. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you would like the community to know, or that you maybe need more from the community to support your efforts?
I guess what I would, at least as a principal, and I'll maybe you have your own thoughts as a classroom teacher, I think in my mind, I would like for the community to continue to be this wonderful and robust community that they are. They're really, I feel like, very supportive of the schools. I would hope that the community will continue to keep in mind that we can really do a great job educating kids and have a healthy balance of education and kind of social emotional well-being. Mm. And I think it can be very easy to, lots of people want to come to Lexington because of the school systems, because of, they research schools because of MCAS scores. Right. And while that is nice, while you can be proud of MCAS scores, my hope as a leader of a school is that we have kids that are not only academically smart, if you will, or do well academically, but that they come out as well-rounded human beings, and that they know how to navigate friendships and how to work with others and take turns and have empathy and appreciate people from different backgrounds and cultures. They're really, we need to send whole children out from our school, right, and our schools, not just kids that, let's say, perform really well academically.
Right. We welcome understanding different cultures and the diversity. I think all classroom teachers are trying to leave that door open to parents to come in and say, would you like to share something that's special? I've had parents come in and read books, in Korean and English, and it's a fairy tale that we've been studying, tied in with a unit, or, sharing about something that's special in their culture, a celebration that they're having. So feeling like that's important too, to build our school culture, and that we want to learn more from each other. It's an important message. We're also supported as classroom teachers through Lexington with professional development. We have so many different courses that are available, like Empathy to Action, and all these different ones that are making us more cultural proficient. So it's nice that we end up having projects that grow out of those classes. Like my class last year, we were talking about what would be a need, and they wanted to make those newcomer bags, and they wanted to have it to be a little resource when someone came to FISC or into our classroom. They started brainstorming at their level of what would be important to have, including a map of the building or, things that they get anxious about, thinking how they would put themselves in their point of view from the new person, saying what would it be like, and then if they also didn't have English as their first language, what would be bigger challenges that they would have, and they wanted all these lists and resources put together, and it was their idea. It's where they grew from. But I think our school council does that too. Our student government, they're very aware of the pulse of what's needed in the building, and we have a really nice community at FISC. I think that's always thinking about those kinds of things, like how do we bring someone else into the fold.
Well, I just want to piggyback on one last thing, because we talked about the whole child. One issue that we've noticed that's missing within the elementary school, and perhaps you can talk to this, is the health education. That there currently is no health education class or program, correct, until 5th grade, or?
There's not a standalone class, but children get health education. They get some health education instruction through phys ed. But there's not necessarily a standalone class, meaning that somebody comes into a classroom and teaches a health ed lesson. 5th grade does human growth and development, and then there might be some incidental teaching in the classroom that, maybe it's, through the classroom teacher, but as far as having somebody come into the classroom, there's not that piece. The health education, as it stands right now, is delivered through the PE teachers at each school and through PE classes.
Would having a separate classes for health education, would that supplement this social emotional learning or the whole child learning, in your opinion, or from what you've seen within the class?
I guess I would say this. I think, obviously, anytime you're doing something to promote the well-being of a child, I think it could potentially have a positive impact. I think the thing that we're faced with is time.
Right.
And finding time in the day. Because there are lots of demands put on schools. And so do I think children would benefit from health education, or maybe more health education? Sure, absolutely. And I think Lexington does a great job of being thoughtful about curriculum and what should be taught at what grade and who needs what. I think we do a very good job with that, but I think it does always come back to time.
I agree with that. I think we're already trying to maintain all the social emotional pieces within our classes and within the building, and the rigor of the academics. To carve that out, I'm not certain how that would work.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to thank you for your time and your expertise here. I also want to mention, you talked about newcomers. With the coalition, we have monthly coffees that welcome new members to the community, as well as members who may want to know more about the partners within the coalition and the resources available. So our next one is February 14th, if you want to spread the word. And we also have a Facebook page, which just look up Lexington Community Coalition on Facebook, and I'm sure you'll navigate your way there.
We'll direct people that way. That's awesome. That's
so that'd be wonderful. But thank you very much for your time. This has been very informative and enjoyable. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.